David, I may be being nostalgic, but I would rather have these problems here. I fundamentally believe that we are still a decent country. I still think we do queuing. I think although we haven't actively tried integration, we have integrated vast swathes of our immigration population over the last 60 years. I think if we go through rule of law collapse here, I think we'll get through it better than everywhere else. But yes, what's going to cause it and exacerbate it is if they keep reaching for more censorship and control. Because it just, after the Southport incidents, which they never declare a riot, by the way, because that has an impact in insurance law, and I don't think it was a riot. But the media class going, shut up. After Southport, it struck me that these are just decent, ordinary people who are going to push back no matter what happens. If you talk to them, which is what the bollard should have done, what Starmer should have done at Southport. He should have talked to them and charmed them, as Agrippa would, because Agrippa speaks their language.
But Starmer is a robot.
No, he's awful, but he's going to cause this. They're going to be causative of these problems.
But sorry, we have to deal with what we've got. We've got to deal with what we've got. We've got somebody who isn't eloquent, who I don't think is decent. Here is a man who accepts clothes on behalf of his wife.
I know, from another man. It's insane. It's just
well, admittedly, a gay man, but even
they're
so,
all right, David. I think we can forgive them.
But one swallows a man who hides behind his son's A levels.
Oh, I know.
Why do you then have, in the current dispensation, because if we actually look at our constitution, there is absolutely no reason why he shouldn't be there for another 4 years. Why do you have that optimism? I mean, I can have it, and I sort of have it, if I half close my eyes, think of England, go for a walk, wander round as I've been doing recently, Westminster, you see early dawn, the Abbey, the house, the Thames. But then you open them and you think, God, who is in Downing Street?
Yes. Well, I have a great faith in the British Constitution, and our great constitutional historian, if you like, or scholar is Dicey. And Dicey eventually came to the conclusion...
Dicey is dead.
He is, but he came to the conclusion that the American Constitution and the British Constitution are completely opposite, yet somehow managed to achieve the same thing. And he really doesn't understand why. And we achieve things here politically, not via law. The great mistake has been to think that it's via law.
But unfortunately, laws become like a cataract, hasn't it? You're the lawyer. You mentioned the rule of law. You mentioned the rule of law still as a good thing. What's happened, of course, thanks to Blair, thanks to Tom Bingham, is that the rule of law has become like a cataract. It now sets itself up above the authority of Parliament, above the sovereignty of Parliament. It's the rule of the few over the many. It's the absolute inversion of our Constitution. Blair did his work so very thoroughly. And I think there's only just now the faintest dawning realization of the extent. I mean, I would want to put it to you that, in fact, what happened from 1997 onwards was, even to talk about it as globalization, in a sense, dilutes it. And I think it's also one of the reasons why the consequences are so shocking here. Remember, for the essentially absolute monarchies, modified slightly by the forms of democracy of continental Europe, in other words, states that have always had standing armies and bureaucracies and gendarmerie, what they have now isn't all that different from what they've been used to. For us, it's utterly, radically different. It's disorientating. But the fundamental problem is, isn't it, that very decency of the English people, that thing that George Orwell talked about, the essential quietness, the calmness, the non-demonstrativeness, the queuing, has rendered us more easily victims of this. And I think this is what I'm frightened of, Stephen. And I'm frightened, desperately frightened, that the only means of escaping from it will be almost as damaging or even more damaging than where we are now.
Well, that is a depressing possibility. I think we will...
Shouldn't we confront it?
Well, yes.
Shouldn't we admit, obviously we do everything we can to avoid it, but shouldn't we admit, if we're honest, That is actually the most likely position at the moment.
Yes, and Churchill told us, Churchill quotes Alexander the Great, saying that the peoples of Asia would never be free because they had not learned to say the word no. And then Churchill goes on to say, let that not be the epitaph of the English speaking peoples. We must learn to say no. And when somebody says, my gender pronouns are, no. When somebody says, you will do that, no.
But to say no in English is impolite. This is the enormous difference between us and the French. To say non is completely acceptable, which is why the French always win in negotiations. Look at the current absurdities in which, in theory, the whole of Europe is trembling before Russia. There's a desperate need for defence alignment between England and Britain and France as the two nuclear powers. And what does France say? Right, we want our fish. I mean, that ability to pursue a ruthless national interest. We have a government that doesn't recognise it. But fundamentally, it's the problem of being English. We don't say no. We say, I'm terribly sorry, but could we think of something? That extra English almost avoids saying no with the degree of elaboration of Japan.
Well, we will have to learn it again, and the Lord God sent us Scotland and Northern Ireland for when we get into real trouble, because throughout the history of the Union, they're the ones who supplied most of the soldiers. You know, they are the ones who are much more capable of violence and tough stuff than we are.
Sorry, you frowned when I talked about the sectarianism of Weimar. You now say that our salvation is going to be no surrender and the sectarianism of Northern Ireland. Stephen, I couldn't have come up with a more depressing conclusion myself.
We are in a bad way, David. We are, and there's no point sugarcoating it now. You know, there's no one of the things we didn't touch on, but the way that the sort of the cult, if you like, the current status quo recruits younger people, and the reason it will fail is that it can't recruit enough of them. So proportionately, those who are passed over massively outnumber those who are favoured. But you become favoured if you repeat the mantras. It's very clear to me. It was always immediately clear to me that if I repeated the mantras, I would be a KC by now. And I would be far more successful than I have been, because that is what you do. You get rewarded at the moment for repeating the cult mantras. There's two reasons I didn't do it. I don't think either of them are particularly noble. One is that repeating mantras is fundamentally anti-intellectual, and my mind just won't do that. I don't want to be a moron. Thank you very much. You know, I'm just not reciting obvious nonsense. And I don't think that's particularly moral. That's a little bit selfish. But the other one is that I don't think they'll last, and I didn't want my head on a pike next to theirs. And I'm afraid that we probably are going to heads on pikes.
Or heretics at the stake.
I don't think they've got the guts. Do you think Starmer's got the guts?
I think Starmer does. I mean, if I cast my mind back to the point at which I experienced the nearest equivalent to burning at the stake, which is cancellation in 2020. You may remember there were two stages. There was the initial one at the end of June, July, which was the cancellation itself. There was then the extraordinary revival of the whole thing in the late summer, when a DC, a detective constable of the Metropolitan Police, came up with the notion that myself and Darren Grimes had committed whatever it is under, is it Section 6 of the Public Order Act, you know, with imprisonment of up to 7 years. One single person, Stephen, one person in public life spoke out to say that this was an idea that was worth testing in court. 3 guesses who it was.
I think I know, but I think it was Sue Gray.
No, it was Keir Starmer.
Oh.
I mean, the one thing that may be optimistic was something I read this morning on, again, the subject of the online safety bill in that, I think, remarkable online journal, the Pimlico Journal, saying, the author saying that he thought that the sheer outrageousness of the online safety bill, coinciding with both the child rape gang scandal, the immigrant scandal, the sudden liberation of Twitter, all of that put together might actually produce a genuine broad-based coalition. In other words, the necessary coming together of the right, and as you said, if I'm not sure I believe you that they exist, the decent people on the left. Let's hope they do.
Yes. Well, they can prove themselves to you then, David, because I do believe they exist. There are patriots there. There always were. And a lot of this is working class versus middle class, as you identified. And let's take great comfort that the working class always outnumber the middle class.